Translational Research on Behavioral Momentum, Becca Uray, the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. The need for translational research. Different branches of the same field can either benefit one another by building on their individual merits and collaborating to develop a stronger field as a whole, or detract from one another by competing for resources and criticizing the value of the other. In the case of behavior analysis, both the applied and experimental domains serve an important purpose and have the ability to advance its counterpart by using its inherent and unique assets. Basic versus applied research. Where basic research can control variables in a laboratory environment to a degree that is not possible in applied settings, applied practitioners can develop findings of basic experimentation and give them social significance by changing the lives of individuals whom the findings personally impact. There is a need for both basic and applied research. When one recognizes the need for both the basic and the applied domains, one can then develop the conversation between the two as a domain in itself. This exchange can become more than a dialogue. It can elevate both domains through joint innovation and thus ultimately affect both basic and applied spheres of a behavior analysis. This is what translational research has begun to accomplish by enhancing behavior analysis as a whole. Translational research improves behavior analysis. Benefit of translational research. While B.F. Skinner developed theories through systematic scientific investigation in a lab, this work was later developed in applied settings. Other influential discoveries have also begun in the lab and been demonstrated as effective in applied settings in many replicated studies. To ignore the benefits of either setting would be to discount the merits of both, and also would hinder the future development of the field as a whole. Translational research serves to bridge these two domains, basic and applied, as neither would likely be sustainable without the other. When these sectors collaborate, they each undoubtedly benefit the other and the field of behavior analysis as a whole. Behavioral momentum. Behavioral momentum theory describes the relation between the characteristic level of reinforcement within a context and behavioral resistance to change within that context. An analogy. If one compares both a bowling ball and a basketball rolling down a hill at equal speeds, the force necessary to cause the balls to roll at the same speed would be different. The bowling ball would be more difficult to decelerate as it has greater mass. So, if there are two operant responses that are controlled by different discriminative stimuli but occur at the same time, the response that has been reinforced at a greater rate in the past will likely be more resistant to change. Behavioral momentum in research. Dube, Ahern, Lionello, DeWolf, and McIlvain in 2009 discuss multiple schedule disruptor paradigm with regard to basic behavioral momentum research with non-human animals. So this was a basic experiment. Results indicate that the effects of rates of reinforcement that are demonstrated by behavioral momentum theory in basic research are also replicated in research with humans who have a diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disabilities. The authors state that their intention was to provide clinicians with a foundation of the translational literature on behavioral momentum theory. Duchamp and Warling in 1994 examined a fading procedure to maintain compliance that occurs with high probability requests. This procedure included systematically reducing the number of high probability requests while increasing the latency between high and low probability requests. Responses were maintained in the study's subjects for due requests. However, Don't requests were not maintained by all subjects. Interestingly, when don't requests were rephrased as do requests, they were maintained as well. Compliance was maintained after the procedure was faded. This is critical with regard to behavioral momentum theory because it demonstrates clinical effectiveness of this theory. Mace, Hawk, Lally, West, Belfiore, and Pinter and Brown in 1988 discussed that behavioral momentum is contingent on a high rate of reinforcement. Their intervention for treating non-compliant behavior began with the presentation of high-probability commands. These would be commands that a subject was highly likely to comply with. Then, they would give a low-probability command. This sequence of high-probability commands led to compliance with a low-probability command. This occurred in all 5 of their experiments. Results indicated that the sequence of high P commands created momentum, thus increasing compliance and decreasing non-compliance and overall duration of the task. Nevin, in 1992, studied pigeon responding in the form of a single key pack. This was observed in 2-component multiple schedules. The ratio of resistance was examined. Results indicated that resistance to change for a single key procedure was dependent on the ratio of reinforcer rates. For 2 key procedures, resistance to change was dependent on the ratio of reinforcer rates and the location of the keys. Nevin, Mandel, and Atack in 1983 described the resistance to change as behavioral momentum. Pigeons were trained to peck on a key on a variable interval schedule. Their resistance to change was measured by delivering food as a reinforcer independent to responding to tasks. For example, food was delivered between components as well as by extinction. This research demonstrated that reinforcement rates may be measured on a ratio scale. Podolsnik and Shahan in 2009. They studied the rate of reinforcement when a stimulus modulates the relative relapse of operant behavior that is occasioned in reinstatement, resurgence, and renewal paradigms. Pigeons responded in the form of key pecks and were reinforced on a variable interval schedule. Also, there was food delivered independent of some responses. They demonstrate that extinction from behavioral momentum is important to examine in basic literature. This has a profound potential effect on applied literature. Examining the renewal and resurgence effects that occur in clinical settings is crucial to developing treatments that are effective in reducing challenging undesired behaviors. Behavioral momentum in the applied setting. From reducing challenging behaviors to increasing desired behaviors, understanding the force necessary to modify a behavior is crucial. When working with individuals acquiring language and learning to request, applying the theory of behavioral momentum helps a practitioner decide how to encourage someone to request in a new way, perhaps through pointing or using a one-word command initially, as well as how to eliminate communication that may be functional but no longer socially appropriate, such as screaming until a desired item is brought to the individual. This theory is extremely socially significant in that many behaviors are highly resistant to change. Future research. This may include generalization of basic experimentation into more varied applied settings that are resistant to change. For example, in the applied world, many practitioners support families whose children behave better in more controlled settings, but in more chaotic, less controlled settings, undesired behaviors are still reinforced. This may occur in a supermarket, toy store, or on the street when a child is engaging in tantrum behavior to access something he or she desires. Educating parents on how to follow through, as well as supporting an individual's generalization of a mastered skill to these less controlled settings, would be extremely socially significant to many families. Conclusion. Translational research in behavioral momentum benefits both the basic and applied communities. One can explore aspects of behavioral momentum in a lab that are not possible in an applied environment. A practitioner, due to ethical guidelines and lack of control of variables, cannot execute experiments in the same way as is possible in a basic setting. Inversely, basic researchers may learn of the social significance of a treatment due to the effect of a treatment on individuals who are directly benefiting from an intervention. As such, these two fields are inseparable, truly two sides of one coin. Each pushes the other forward, and each grounds the other, providing a framework for the continued or possible success of the other. This is exactly what has occurred in the field of behavioral momentum, which can be verified in documented research as described in this review of literature. Each distinct domain leads to the further development of the other. Translational research achieves the communication between these distinct branches and unifies the field of behavior analysis. References. More references, and even more references. Thank you very much.